You are lucky that with this website that your client has given you all of the content already typed up. In fact, all of the content is typed up in individual web pages, showing you where paragraph breaks are as well as where headings are. They've also put in all of the images that they want you to use in this website. So all you have to do as the web designer for this is actually create the layout and the design of the website. So we're going to start by creating a new HTML file. And we're using HTML, but we're not actually creating an HTML file. We're creating what is called a Dreamweaver template. And it has a different extension. It's called .dwt. And templates are used so that all of your design and layout is located on one page. Then you apply it to all of your plain pages like these. And that way, if you need to change your layout later, you change it in one spot, as opposed to having to change it on every single page. So here, we're going to start. You're going to need, instead of your common tab on your insert bar, you're going to need your layout tab. And here on standard, the second icon here says Draw AP Div. Go ahead and click on it. When you click on it, nothing happens, and that's because you actually have to draw your AP Div. So I'm going to draw a rectangle on the page. Now remember that you have properties, and it depends on what you have selected. So we need to select our div. You can click on it. You can also ensure that you have it selected by using your tag selector right here. I'm going to change the name of this. By default, Dreamweaver gives it AP Div 1 through whatever. And on this page, we're going to have 3 divs, but it's not uncommon for you to have numerous, countless divs in a website. So it's always a good habit to name them. We're going to name this Container, C-O-N-T-A-I-N-E-R. Then we're going to give this a width of 770 pixels. And the reason that it's 770 pixels, 2 reasons actually. Remember that we have to create our websites so that they do not scroll left to right on a web page. Also, the banner that has the company's logo for this website, their banner is 750 pixels. So we have to accommodate that. This is on the narrow side, but it's not uncommon to see this from time to time. Now, we're going to go ahead on the height and give this a height of 600 pixels. However, at a later time, we're going to change that. And down here, see where it says BG color? We're going to change the background color to black. Now, there's more properties that we need to add to this so that we can center this div on the page so that our website has a margin on the left and the right, and everything is centered. So you have a CSS Styles panel, and if you double click on it, you can expand it. When you first open it, it probably looks like this. You're going to have to drag down so that you can see this area here. You'll see where it says Style. If you don't, click on All. And then there's an arrow next to Style. And you'll see Container. And remember, that is the name of our div. So I'm going to click on Container, and then I can see all of the properties for it that I've already applied. Background color, height, and width. Now, some of the other things that we have to apply are where it's located, its position. Left is referring to how many pixels from the left side of the page do you want it to start. Well, we actually don't want that because we're going to center it. So I'm going to delete that property. Top, however, is where it starts from the top of the page, and we want it to be at the very top. So I'm typing in 0 for 0 pixels, and you can see it bump up to the top. Now, position, if you keep it at absolute, it bases it only on like the XY coordinates of your top and left. If you keep it relative or change it to relative, it's going to adjust it based on the size of your browser, how big you have it expanded on your page. Then we need to add a property, and we're going to add the property. You can either type it in, or if you click on this drop down, you get a whole list of what it should be. And then if I type in M, notice it takes me down to the margins. Now, I want to apply a left and a right margin. Those are the only two, so that's what I'm going to apply. Margin left and make it auto. And now you can see this area on the left. And now if I do the same and choose margin right and change that to auto, you can see where this div will be centered in the center of the page. The Z index, just so that you know, if you think about it like in layers, as in Photoshop, it puts things, or can put things, in front of other divs. And so the Z index is important. We're keeping it there at 1. All right, now we're going to need to draw another div, actually 2 more divs. Remember that the container holds everything. So I'm going to go into my split view, and I'm going to choose my Draw AP div, and I'm going to draw another div. Now, this div, when I draw it, is going to need to be called header. It's going to contain our banner with the logo. So I named it header. Now, it actually needs to be moved inside the container tag. Okay, when I say inside I should say inside the container, not the tag. So you can see the opening and the closing tag. Here, because I have my header div selected, it's highlighted here in my code. And I can drag it to in between the tags so that it's inside my container. So you should wind up with your opening container tag, your opening div tag, your closing div tag, and your closing container tag. Okay? That way you know it's in there. Now, when you click back in your design view, your header doesn't look like it's in the container, and that's fine because we have to make some changes to it. So over here in our CSS Styles, click on Header. First is height. The size of our image is 196 pixels in height, so I'm going to type in 196. I want it to be 10 pixels from the left side of the container div. So when I do that, notice it bumps it over. Now, the position is going to be relative to being inside the container tag. It's going to be 10 pixels from the top, and then the width of this is going to be the same width as my image, which is 750. And there it is. Now, before I actually drag my image in from my images folder, there's the banner, I actually want to save this as a template because it's going to tell me that I need to. So I'm going to say File, and instead of Save As, I am going to File, Save As Template right here. And again, this is saving it as a Dreamweaver template. It's a different extension than a .htm. I'm going to call this Texas Template and click Save. If I hit refresh in my Files panel, you'll see that I have a template folder with the template inside of it. Okay? So now I can expand my images folder, and I can drag that first image, which is called Texas Temp, and I can drag it inside the header. It asks for the alternate text. The text that is on this image says Texas, so we may as well call it, or give it that, Texas. Remember, this is the descriptive text of the image, and then there it is. Now, we're going to use our AP, or our Draw AP div, to draw the div where the content is going to be. So I'll click on that, and I'll draw another rectangle. When I select this one, I'm going to name it Content. Now, same thing up here in the code. It needs to come before the closing div tag. So it's going to go right there. Okay? So I'm going to highlight it again, and I'm going to just drag it right there. That's going to make sure that the content div is inside the container div. And you can see that my image is inside my header div, because here's my header, there's my image, there's my closing header div. Now my content starts. Right here is where my content will end. And remember that I can hit, in my code, I can hit enter to separate that to make it easier for me to see if I need to. Okay? Now I'm going to hit refresh in my CSS Styles, and I'm going to select my content div, and I'm going to go to my CSS Styles and select my content div. Now, my height of this, later on I'm going to change it to auto, but because we want the contents to determine the height of our div, but for right now I'm going to set it at 500 pixels. It also needs to be 10 pixels from the edge of the div, and it needs to have a relative position. Now, it appears to disappear once I do that. It hasn't disappeared, it just moved down, okay? And we want it to be 10 pixels from here. Now, when I typed in 10, it bumped it right up to the edge. And that's because, remember, we have 10 pixels at the top. So I'm going to type in 20. And now it gives it a nice little empty space between the banner div or the header div and this content div. My width is going to be 750 because that was the same as my header. You see this up here? Okay. Now, I want to give this a white background color right there. And I'm going to type in the words page title and then hit return and body content. Now, before we do anything else, I want you to notice that this text is up against the wall of the div. It's too close. It makes it hard to read. So I want to add another property to this content div called padding. So if I add property and hit that button and go to P, notice that there is the ability to put in padding all the way around, or I can assign padding to individual sides. I'm going to choose padding all the way around and make it 10 pixels. Now when I do that, I get a nice little buffer here around or between the text and the wall, but notice that it also moved my div to where it's now bigger than the content cell. So anytime you add padding, it actually makes it appear to add to the size of the div. Okay, because it's referring to 750 pixels of workable space. So now instead of it being from the wall, this is my workable space. Okay, so I need to go and reduce this by 20 because there's 10 pixels on each side. 730 is what I'm changing it to, and now it fits properly. Now I'm going to select page title, and I'm going to give it an H1, a heading number 1. And up here in my code, I'm going to highlight everything, the H1 through the closing H1. And I'm going to apply what is called an editable region. That means that I'm going to be able to edit this on every page. Because remember, the design, I'm only going to be able to edit on the template page. So I go to Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region, and I'm going to call this Page Title with no spaces. And notice it puts the blue border around it. I'm going to do the same for Body Content, include the P tags, Insert, Template Objects, Editable Region, Page Content, and click OK.